committee and those who are viewing, because we're making sure that those who couldn't attend could also see. We have two really valuable members from the Department of Education, Santiago and Mark Dunham, who oversees all the finance. Mark, you've been doing financial budgeting, so I'm going to say 35 years at least.
Yeah, you're all right. About time I hang it up, right?
No, I think if you leave, we'll all be in big trouble. So there's been a lot of conversations about what people believe is in the budget or what they believe they see, but what Mark and Santiago are going to show you are the financial dashboards available to any member of the public who can sort of dig down and drill to some information that you may find helpful as we begin budgeting season. Santiago came with Scott Goslin to the budget subcommittee, and the budget subcommittee requested that the entire committee receive a presentation so that, one, really what they're going to show you is a couple of slides about Charahoe to get you into the data, and then how to access the dashboard and find some information and get your questions. Sound good? Mm-hmm. Thank you. And you're ready to go. Eric's going to navigate for you.
All right, well, I'm just going to start by introducing Santiago, but so I'm Mark Dunham. Thank you for the introduction, Gina. I'm the Chief Finance Officer at the Department of Elementary and Secondary Education. And this is, some of you know, Santiago Guerrero. He is a Senior Financial Analyst at the department. So thank you for inviting us. So Santiago's going to make the presentation tonight. He has created these dashboards. He's done a great job creating these dashboards and the tools you're going to see, and he's going to introduce you some tools to help you navigate yourself. If we let him, he would keep you here all night long. So we've gave him a deck and a time limit. But feel free to ask questions. I think during the presentation, I check with Santiago is fine. And if there's a question for me, I'll pipe in, but I think he can handle this whole thing. So why don't you get started?
Sorry, hello everyone. Good night. As Mark said, my name is Santiago Guerrero. Today we're going to show you the dashboards. Let me introduce. Let me put this bigger so we can see this. So this is what we plan to do. It's first we'll talk a little bit really quickly about what UCOA is, so you're familiar with it. It's very brief. Then hello, is it you listen to me? Okay, perfect. So then we'll I'll show some graphs that we prepared, like an overall summary of revenues and expenditure trends in Chariho. But then we'll move to what's going to be the bulk of what we're going to do is demonstrate how the different UCOA dashboards. We just gave you a handout of some printouts of the dashboards, of some of the dashboards. There's many more. The dashboards online are much more interactive. This is just like a static, what I printed out is a static version, but you can see what they are. And yeah, let's start with the quick introduction of UCOA. So UCOA is the Uniform Chart of Accounts. It was implemented more than 10 years ago in the state of Rhode Island. It basically was an initiative of the state and RIDE to have a chart of accounts that was the same for all the districts, and that could have like very detailed information to do financial analysis of the schools and districts, and so that you could also do apples to apples comparisons between the different districts. We know that it's very like coding and reporting that data to RIDE is a lot of work, and we want to thank Greg Senion and Lynn Guven from Chariho. They do a great job submitting very clean data, and very on-time data. So we're thankful for that, because we do know that it's a lot of work to code every transaction and provide us the data, and because we know that it's a lot of work, we have started some initiatives to give the districts and the public back that information. We know that the districts take a lot of time preparing that information, so we give you back some analysis that hopefully can be used for decision making at the district level, for accountability, for many different purposes, and those are the dashboards that I'm gonna share. And yeah, so it was like 2 years or 2 or 3 years back from now, we started with this initiative. And every year we build more data resources depending on what we believe and what some districts have told us would be interesting or useful to have. Every year we're taking more steps towards broadening the use and the timeliness of the UCOA data. So we like to do this. We meet with the business managers and present the data dashboards to them. We've met in several associations, like the School Committee Association, the Superintendent's Association. We've gone to several different associations to kind of show these dashboards to make sure that the people are aware of them and can start using it more and more. And we plan to keep doing that. And like as I said, like every year we're adding more data to it. While it has a lot of financial data, we're trying to combine and add other education data. So you'll see some data about, like, for example, the demographics of the districts and schools and how they relate to how much they spend, the district and school spend, or some outcomes of the different schools and districts. So we're trying to, every year advance more, and like I guess the final goal is kind to go to be able to draw some relationships on like figure out like if some spending patterns can be associated with some outcomes, some good outcomes. But yeah, that's on the work for now. Like, these dashboards are just presenting you the data in a way that it's easily that you can digest and can use for decision making. Before going to to some of the data, I wanted to talk about this because it was about 2 to 3. I think it was 3 years ago, the General Assembly made a change in the law where it requires to every year produce a fiscal accountability report where we summarize the data of UCOA and do some of this analysis. So that's what sparked some of this movement towards using more the UCOA data. And in addition, like it was like a requirement, and they funded the positions to do that. So that's funded my position. So that's what I've been working on. So this is a report that we do every year. It's sent to the Assembly. It's public. It's in our website. I'll show you how to get to the dashboards. And next to the dashboard is the report, which goes very general on the state, but also shows some district trends. And so here I'm going to just show 3 or 4 slides of some overall general trends in terms of revenues and expenditures on Chariho. So this first one is the Chariho 5-year cumulative percentage change, local versus state funding. So here basically what we want to see, like how fast has the local taxes versus the revenue from state sources increased in the past 5 years. We did this analysis for the previously, since the change in the funding formula, but for now it's for this case it's just the past 5 years. And basically what it shows in Chariho and most of the districts is like the revenue from the state sources are growing at a much higher pace than the revenue that the districts get from their local communities. Here it shows like between 2017 and 18, school years 2017 and 18 and 22-23, the state sources increased cumulatively 13.4 percentage, while the local taxes increased 5.6%, which is around an 8 percentage point difference. So and this is not unique to Chariho. This is many Rhode Island school districts have been experiencing this, but we always I guess we like the fact that the state is putting more money. We would like the communities to also contribute, increase what they're contributing to the education. This second one shows like the 10-year per pupil expenditures and enrollments. So the little persons or the little shows the enrollment in the past. This I think is from 12 to 10 years. It's like a 10-year. So it just shows first, like the enrollment in Chariho has declined 11% since 2013 to 2022-23. And then the per pupil expenditures, and this is also very common in Rhode Island. Like before the pandemic, you can see the pandemic is 1920. It was kind of growing steadily. Then the pandemic hit. It was a year that the per pupil went down a little bit because many school buildings were closed. There's some savings on transportation, food, so the per pupil expenditure went down. But then after the pandemic, like you can see a very steep increase in per pupil expenditures. Not only, as I said, this is most of the district, not only Chariho, and that is driven by a decrease in enrollment, but also by like the COVID funds, the COVID federal funds, that increased although Chariho didn't get as much as other districts, still they got enough to make a difference and show like make this trend look how it's increasing. One thing to note is 22-23 is the last year here. 23-24 already ended. It had also where there also ESSER 3 funds were the last being spent, but then 24-25, the current year, is when the COVID funds expired. So that's a moment where the district want to, like, if they're using some of those funds for some activities that they want to continue, like that's something that they have to figure out where to replace those funds. This one just shows what I was talking about. So it is basically the blue line is the per pupil expenditures, the same as before, and the dotted orange line is the per pupil expenditure without the COVID federal funds. So it's like that's the around each year it was like around 500 per pupil that came just from federal funds, and as I said, those funds are expiring. So or expired already. That's something to note. Here is another chart that we added this year, and this is this shows like the same 5-year period and compares the change in enrollment versus the change in teacher FTE change in teacher FTE. And this is for Charihu, it looks good. Like your enrollment has gone down, but it has been accompanied with some adjustments in teacher FTE. So you can see that the enrollment has reduced like 4.2% cumulatively in this period of time. The FTE has been reduced, the teacher FTE has been reduced by 2.5%. So we see other districts where like the enrollment is going down and the teacher FTE is going up, which is not sustainable. I think like Charihu seems to be like know that you have less students, have been making adjustments in terms of the size of a teacher, and like because enrollment, at least from part of the state funding formula, drives the revenue. So if enrollment goes down, revenue goes down. So you're gonna have less money to pay for the teachers and for other resources. And so that was a brief overview. Now I'm gonna talk about like the different dashboards, and then I'm gonna go through 2 of them. Those are the ones that you have in your little printout. So the first one here is the LEA financial infographic, and this is a new one. This one we created this year, and it was basically we created it because like this year at a Senate hearing, went to speak with an education Senate hearing to show all or to update on all that we have done, and they really liked all that we had done in terms of the profile, the LEA profiles, which gonna go next, and the report. But also there were a couple of senators said that it would be useful to have a much more simple resource. So this financial infographic is meant to be like a simpler, like a light version of the other dashboards. So basically it just shows some very overall general information about the school, the revenues and expenditures and outcomes. And for someone that wants to get more into it, then there's the LEA profile, which the LEA financial infographic just shows your district, the district that you choose, and shows like a 1-year change in different metrics. The LEA profile is a little bit much more complicated. Well, it shows 5-year trends in many different metrics that are not just like general revenues and expenditures, but take advantage of the complexity of the UCOA string and kind of go through the different ways that the UCOA string can explain or can assess how the money is being spent. And I'll show you that. Before going into, those are the 2 that we're gonna go into, but I'm gonna show you 3 others that are available, and I'm gonna show you, because we don't have enough time, I won't go through this, but I'm gonna show you how to get to them so you are aware of them. The first one is the data exploration tool. I think this was meant more for people that are really familiar with UCOA. And for example, one thing that UCOA allows you, like the Uniform Chart of Accounts, is to pinpoint very particular expenditures. So for example, and that was what UCOA, one of the initial, how UCOA was initially envisioned, is that you can actually, it's so complex because if you want to go to know like how much is this particular school spending on textbooks in mathematics, you can get to that. You can get to that by looking at the different segments of the string and kind of filtering and find exactly how much this school spend on mathematics textbooks this year. This is just an example, but that's things that can be done, and yeah, that exploration tool allows you to do that. The other one is the LEA budget. So LEAs are required to submit us the budget after 30 days after it was approved. So LEAs send us the budgets and we publish them and are available to the public to explore. And yeah, Charihu as always submitted the budget this year and past year in a timely manner. So you can see the fiscal year 25 budget there and fiscal year 24. So you can, you go to the dashboard, click on Charihu, and it'll show you the budget and the whole UCOA string of the budget to the detail that you want. And the last one is what we call the resource allocation tool. And while all the different tools that I've talked about now focus at the LEA level, the resource allocation tool focuses at the schools. So because of the complexity of the UCOA string, you can get to how much districts are spending in particular schools. So that resource is meant to help inform, like, for example, are schools spending more on districts that have higher needs? Or or are schools that have certain students with certain characteristics spending on programs that are for those characteristics? So that one allows you to explore, to get to that. It was meant, when we thought about it, it was thought for, particularly for budgeting purposes. Like we thought that maybe, and we know that maybe sometimes districts and people in the district are not aware that there's differences in the per pupils of the different schools, so that provides that information. We won't go through that, but I'm gonna show you how to access that dashboard. And so those are the different ones. I'm gonna go in a little bit fast, but to show you the ones that you have printout. So, and I'll show you how to get there. And also, like, this PowerPoint presentation has everything hyperlinked. So I don't know if Gina can share it at some point. They can access everything that way. But I'm gonna show you how to access them without the hyperlink. So if you go to the, let me see if I'm not a Mac person, but I think I figured it out. So you go to right.gov. Yeah, it's not super clear, but yeah, there's funding and finance drop down. Then there's school, where you go, there is school district financial data. When you click there, then you go to Uniform Chart of Accounts, that's UCOA. And if you go down here, there's a section where it's all the UCOA data dashboards. So these are the different ones that I mentioned. I'm gonna go first quickly through the LEA financial infographic. That's the first page of the handout that I gave you. So when you open it, it goes to, let me put it full screen, see if it looks better. So yeah, when you open it, it goes to the whole Rhode Island, but you can choose Charihu, so you choose Charihu. So basically what it shows here is, like, at the top, it shows, in the map where Charihu is, then in the top right, it shows, like, okay, how many schools you have. And as I said, the online version is very interactive, so people can hover over and you'll see, okay, they have 8 schools. Which are those 8 schools? So it shows you which are all those 8 schools. One thing that is, and you cannot see it because it's too small, but it's showing that hover over shows the enrollment of each school and what was the 1 year percentage change in enrollment. So you can see which schools have in the last year have gained enrollment, lost enrollment, so that can be seen there. And then they have this one that shows, like, the trend in the enrollment, and so similarly, like, this dashboard focuses in the current year that we have the data is 22-23, the latest year that we have UCOA data, and shows a 1 year change in everything to kind of figure out how you were in last year, in 21-22. One thing to note quickly, I'm sure, because people always ask, when is this might be a little bit outdated, when is the 23-24 data coming? The schools, the districts are submitting us the files. They have a deadline until December of this year, but usually many districts get extensions. So around April, May of next year, we have all the districts to update this. But with that said, we always offer, like for the ones that send us their file early, we can always share back something with their file. You won't have the comparison with other districts, but you can see like this for your own district. Yeah, with that said. And 22-23, all the data here is 22-23. So here is, for example, outcomes. There's assessment, and there's attendance. While there's already 23-24 data available, this is 22-23. Like this just shows 22-23 because it matches the year of the UCOA data. So yeah, so basically, yeah, as I said, at the top, it has some general details. As again, shows like while enrollment has decreased in the last year, it decreased by 3.3%, and the number of educators decreased by 2.7. So yeah, so there's, as I said, there's been some adjustments. Then here on the bottom left, it shows the revenues, the total revenue. So it's 68.5 revenues. 68.5 million in revenues for 22-23, and it showed like how it's composed by the different sources. So 61% local taxes, 23% state sources, 6% federal, and 10% other revenue sources. This is particular of Chariho. Other is usually much more in all the other districts, but when you hover over Chariho, like Chariho gets a good amount of tuition from other districts for their CTE program, so that's a good source of revenue for Chariho. And also that there's every year I noticed there's a reappropriation of the fund balance from the previous year. So yeah, that's the revenues. And I said, if you hover over this, there's more details about each of the different line items and how they changed between last year and this year. Then here are the expenditures per pupil and the expenditures by function. What I wanted to highlight here, I think is the one that increased the most was the category other, which includes out-of-district tuition and transportation. That's an area where it's increasing higher, like the rate of increase is high in Chariho compared to other expenditures. And here is just outcomes. Shows like 22-23 was a very positive year for Chariho, where like there was increased in 4.4 percentage points in ELA RICAS, 5.9 percentage points in Math RICAS, 3 percentage points in ELA SAT. Anyway, it was all across the board. Like last year, it was a good increase in improvement in the different assessments. And down here, it focuses on expenditures by object. So object means like how much you're spending in personnel, compensation, salaries, and non-personnel expenditures, which can be like just tuition. There's many different categories. But here, you won't, like the screenshot doesn't show enough, but I think in your printout, you can see that the employee compensation and benefits increased by 4%. That category so employee compensation and benefits makes 76% of your budget, and it increased by 4 percentage points. But when you hover over, and that you cannot see there, but we'll see in the other dashboard, and like where the biggest increase was in health and medical premiums, which increased 24% between 21-22 and 22-23. And that will be more clear in the other dashboard. So those are things that you can see in this information and kind of question, okay, why is this, why are these increases happening? There's always an explanation, but yeah, it's good to see these trends and kind of ask questions. Oh yeah, sorry. Does anyone have any questions until now, or I said?
So think about the questions that you've had during budget season. This is a great opportunity for Santiago to share where you may find information that you are the most interested about.
Oh, that's a good point. Yeah, because it might be in one of the different dashboards, not the ones that I'm presenting right now.
So if I could just clarify, what this dashboard is showing is yet another layer of transparency for our budgeting process. You see where the money is spent, you see where the increases are happening. You can see 24% increase in healthcare costs, which are largely outside of the district's control. So what this is doing is it's just another tool for people to look at our budgeting process, to understand how we make the decisions that we make, but then also so you can see the transparency of this is where your tax dollars are going. Quite frankly, and this is one of the reasons why we wanted this presentation today, was to show you the level of transparency that is available to you in a school budget. You can see 76% of our costs go to staff, and salaries and benefits. So that's how we start to build our budget. So I appreciate this level of attention. And this is available to any taxpayer to go online and to look and get real granular with it to see. UCOA is very confusing. I've been doing this for 11 years now, and it's still confusing to me. You don't budget a school budget the way that you budget your household budget. I don't budget the way I budget my business budget. It's a very complex system, but this is great because it makes it just a little bit easier to understand. So I appreciate, and I also appreciate the fact that we gave you a half hour to give an hour presentation. So thank you for being able to condense it for us.
Okay, perfect. Yeah, very good. And thanks for that, because yeah, that's precisely what we want to do, like make UCOA in a way that's more accessible to anyone that's interested in it. It's
And to add what the chair just said, there was one component, UCOA is, we have to abide to. If there's no ifs, ands, buts about it, we have to abide.
So, and actually, with Mark here too, so sometimes the question happens, oh, why was this changed? Why are you now putting it in this bucket? Well, RIDE will say to us, that's a professional development. You need to code that differently next year. That's going to go into this bucket. So when sometimes, and we'll note those changes for you in the budget when things are moved, because when our assistant finance director, Lynn Gubin, reviews it, sometimes we have the conversations that something should really be in one section of UCOA versus another. So that's how we make sure with RIDE and the other districts that we stay comparable. And that was legislated, which is why the Uniform Chart of Accounts was a way for the state to sort of say, we're going to compare apples to apples, and we want to know how districts compare in spending.
yes. Oh, yeah.
Does this show the difference in school districts and what each different school has for healthcare contributions?
The next one, I'm gonna show it really quickly.
Okay.
Shows all of that. Can I move
Sure,
quickly
absolutely.
through that? If there's any other question? Or let's move to the other one, which is the one that I think you're more interested in, is how you compare with other districts. So it's the LEA financial profiles, and it's the one that we developed first when we got the requirement from the General Assembly. So again, financial data, and it's called. It was on the same page. If you go down, LEA financial profile. So this is the second one that you have there in your printouts, and it's a 4-page document, which this is in much more detail. Has a 5-year change instead of a just 1-year change, and it goes through the different segments. So I'm gonna go to your question right now once it loads. So if you go to this is a 4-page document.
And Santiago, just to be clear, so the state cohorts us, but we're not cohorted necessarily with Washington County school districts. So they look at districts that are comparable, maybe in size and in other areas, and then they cohort them. So you'll see like the different, we're the dark blue bubble, where other districts that RIDE considers comparable to us are in the gray.
Yeah, definitely.
And if you want to know what they are, you just hover over them and it tells you.
So yeah, we identified, let me put Shariho. So we identified like benchmark district for each district, and how we made the identification with, I chose the wrong one, sorry. We used an algorithm that kind of looked at the state share ratio of each district, whether they are suburban, urban, or urban ring, and the size. So you're grouped with districts that have similar state share ratio, are similar size, and are suburban. And the ones that are your district is grouped are the ones down here: Westerly, Middletown, Bristol Warren, Chariho, North Kingstown, and Smithfield. That can be customized in the dashboard. If you are other ones that you compare yourself with, that could be customized, but we're gonna stay with that. And as I said, as Gina said, the blue is your own district, and the gray are all the comparable districts. So it goes over, for example, I'm gonna just show you quickly, maybe this one is an interesting one to show. Percentage differently able students. You have 17% differently able students. If you go over here, if you hover over, it shows the trend. So it shows your district has been increasing from like in 17-18, you have 13.5, and now it's 17% differently able students. So that's those students are require more services and are and this other one shows all the comparison districts. So for example, here it shows like the one that has the highest is Middletown, which has 20.4% disabled, differently able students. So that's how this dashboard is set up. So the blue one is your district, the gray ones are the comparable districts. I'm gonna go to the question, and it has different pages, but just to go to the question, like in page 3, it shows like the expenditures of your district by object, which is, object tells you like, is it spent on compensation, employee benefits, or non-personal services? So here you see that the Chariho spends health and medical benefits are 19% of total compensation, which is higher, like the red dots is always the average of the comparable districts, which is higher than all the comparable districts. So all of these ones are, the one that has the lowest one is North Kingstown. There's one up here that Westerly has a higher, but it's above the average of the comparable districts. And we hover over, it shows the trend, and you can see the last year, like what we saw on the other one. Like the last year, the per pupil in health medical benefits increased from 1,741 to 2,202. And you can do it also as a per pupil instead of percentage of salaries. Which also shows that it's a little bit
And again,
above
you can
average.
compare it to any district of your choosing.
Yeah.
They ride cohorts us with the schools that Santiago mentioned, but if you have a question about Cranston and
Definitely, yeah.
Charahoe, you can pull those up side by side.
And yeah, you do that by putting all here and then pressing customize. But yeah, that's how you would do it. I don't know if it's better to, I plan to go quickly over all the pages, or it's better to just wait. People have answers. I don't know what.
Do you have
more
other
useful for
questions before
everyone.
Santiago shows you what's available on each page? Go for it.
Okay, and I'll go quickly because I know we have have a little time. So here it just shows so up here we're like district summary where you have like your change in enrollment, another thing that I wanted to highlight quickly. This one shows the change in your out of district students, so your students that go to other districts, and it has increased 12% in the past 5 years. And I think it's due, I looked for it, it's due to a couple of charters where your students are going more, I forgot what it is, I wrote it here. The Compass School and Narragansett, so I think Narragansett is for CT, some of your students are going to CT to Narragansett, and the Compass School, more of your students are going to
Yeah, we
charter
see
school.
sometimes families that want a smaller high school because the high school is much smaller than ours.
Okay, perfect. So yeah, and I won't go over all of this because you can just hover over. Let's go to these are the per pupil expenditures, and this is how you compare to all the different districts in your benchmark group. So you are a little bit around the average of the districts, but there are some that have higher per pupil like Westerly and some that have lower per pupil like Smithfield. So yeah, so you can see here is Chariho, and it shows like the per pupil. This is the same chart that I showed at the beginning. Down here, it focuses on the revenues and revenues per pupil. Again, like you have, if I change here on percentage of total revenues, you get a higher share of other revenues because of the CT programs and the revenue that you get from the CT programs, and also the reappropriation of fund balance that happens every year. And here it shows like all of the dashboards from all of the different pages from now on have something similar like this, and it's the 5-year percentage point change. So basically what this is saying is that between 17-18 and 22-23, your budget has gone down 4.4 percentage points in local taxes and gone up 2.8 percentage points in revenue from federal sources and from other revenues. And that's because in 17-18, 65.8 of your revenues were from local taxes, and in 22-23, 61% were from local taxes. So yeah, that's you're relying less and less on total taxes. And here you can see also like in the terms of the percentage of your total revenue, you're in the bottom of all the comparable districts with only 59%. And the per pupil. That's, yeah, I'm not sure the local taxes, like the ESSER money, like the revenue from other federal sources has gone up 2.6% in this 5 year. Oh, yes.
In the regional school districts, do you have the ability to break it down by community versus the school?
In terms of this dashboard, in terms of their revenues, no, because in UCOA we get it as a one
by district.
code.
Just asking.
But in terms like when we see like the table which says how much is appropriated, how much is the calculations of the state aid, I think there you can determine that different things. But unfortunately from here you don't see it. What you can see in one of the other dashboards is in terms of the per pupil by school, which some schools I imagine are associated to some communities. But yeah, let me go to page 2. So page 2 goes expenditures by function. That's another part of the UCOA string. And what I wanted to highlight here, like the big change, or there's no big change, but the only one that is kind of notable is like 1.3 percentage point increase between 17-18 and 22-23 in non-operating commitments. And non-operating commitments includes out-of-district tuition and transportation. So that's another area that has been increasing more rapidly than other expenditures, not only in Chariho, but in many other districts around Rhode Island. But here you can see how much you spend on per pupil on all these different functions, and you're like around the average of all the districts. Then down here is we focus on program. There's nothing. You spend a little bit less per pupil on special education, but then when we presented this to different districts, they wanted to understand more like, okay, how do you, because special education and CT expenditures are made of expenditures of your, for example, special education of the students that are in your classroom and expenditure of students that are outplaced out of the district. So down here it shows like how an analysis and a distinction between special education in district and out of district, outplaced versus in district. And one thing that we noted is like in 21-22 and 22-23, the outplaced increased. Like before it was like in 2021 it was 5% of the special education were for outplaced, and then 21-22 and 22-23 went up to 10%. And I think if you hover over here, you can see like there's in 21-22 and 22-23, looks like there was almost double the amount of outplaced students, and I guess that explains that increase in the outplaced expenditures. Then here is the same city in district versus out of district. Here you can see that the Chariho keeps like 93% of their city expenditures are in district, and that was much higher than any other comparable district. So that's great. Like your city program is keeping your students, your city programs or your city center is keeping your students in district, and like 93% of expenditures are for your own programs that also attracts students from other districts, while only 7% is for sending some of your students out of district. And if you hover over here, it gives you detail. It's Narragansett, Demet, and North Kingstown and Situate. So I guess it shows.
Santiago, if I could jump in. So it sounds like what you're doing is you're just kind of taking us a walk through the pages. In consideration of the time, which is our fault, so I apologize.
Yeah, no problem.
It is our fault. Are there questions from the committee or from the audience that we could take specifically? If not, then what I'm going to invite everybody to do is navigate on your own. And certainly if you have questions with the process, I'm sure we can contact your office and get questions answered. And certainly you can always contact the superintendent or the director of finance. So does anybody have any questions? I've got Pat and then Laura.
Yeah, I'm just curious with all the schools that we showed. I know you said it was by population and student and all that, but all these are single schools and not regional schools. So I think a big impact with Charahoe is we have a large land mass for the three separate towns that I'm sure Westerly, Middletown, that these other schools are not.
Yeah,
dealing
Bristol,
with.
there are 5 other regional districts. So you can customize and look at Bristol Warren, you can look at Foster Gloucester, Exeter West Greenwich as examples. As far as we are the largest mass of land, but there are other regional school districts. We are the only one that has 3 towns.
And to that point, if you, in the last page, you can see expenditures per pupil on transportation, and Chariho has the highest one, which makes sense because your students have to travel the longest distances. And yeah, that's
question.
the one that I put up.
I just had a question for, you did,
Or just speak into the microphone so they
Oh,
can hear. 'cause
sorry.
Thank you.
I just wanted to confirm, you cannot separate by schools, correct? Like within a district, it's only by district?
There's another dashboard that you can see that. Like
Oh,
all-
that you can actually
Yeah.
go more granular with it?
yeah, you can see how much each district spends per pupil by all these categories and their demographics, kind of to assess whether you're spending more on schools that have higher needs. And the answer is yes. Yeah, you spend
Right. So
like the
I
alternative.
think what I was asking though is within our district, we have, multiple schools. And so I was asking if you're able to filter the report so that we can see, elementary schools within our district, or if the reports are only for.
you can see the per pupil expenditure by elementary school.
You can-
Oh, okay, but you can't see the actual,
Yeah.
okay, thank you.
Let me show you very quickly. So you go to that. It's called the resource allocation dashboard. And there you can see what you're asking for. So if you just click on Chariho, and here it shows PPE and demographics. So it shows like how much you spend per pupil by school and the demographics. So as I say, like your alternative school spends the highest per pupil and is where the highest needs are. So that makes sense. But yeah, anyway, this resource allows you to explore that. There's many different sheets here where you can explore by the funding of the different schools, by compare the achievement, like there's many different things, but yeah. So I
And when
encourage
we
you to-
allocate our budget, we're responsible, like when Mike does the CRP, he has to completely show how we are supporting schools that have a higher need. So for example, the middle schools are only Title I school. So we have to sort of siphon out exactly how we're providing different level of supports than we would for a school that's not a complete Title I school, as an example.
Other questions?
Thank you very much, both of you, for attending. We appreciate your time.
Thank you for inviting us, and let me put this, our email is here, so we're always looking for, sorry. So you can write that, ucoa.right.gov, I think. And yeah, if you have any questions, we're happy to go through this information with you. If you have any other data that you have interest on, we'll be happy to run reports with that data. We know that if one school district is interested in something, probably many others are interesting. So we like to update these data resources and make it as useful as possible to everyone that's interested in them. So yeah, thank you again for it.
Thank you very much.
Appreciate your time.